4. Types of investors. There are lots of types of investors, and the type of investor that you're dealing with should give you an indication about their intentions and where they're likely to go in the event that things go wrong. The type of investor will determine the power that they have in the negotiation, the leverage that they will likely wield, and the potential consequences in the event that something does go wrong. Friends and family. This agreement is ideal if you're dealing with investments that are friends or family. They say that the only people that invest in early stage ventures are friends, family, and fools. You will feel most guilty if a business fails and it affects the life savings of a family member. But they're also not likely to litigate and drag you through the courts. The problem with a family member as an investor is that if the business does fail, they may not have fully understood that they could lose their money with the failure of the business. And therefore, when the business goes, their money is gone with it. You are unlikely to sit and explain to them the difference between shares and a loan. And therefore, you are likely to want to pay them back at your earliest convenience, even if they're there to see the fallout. The other problem is that family members get involved. Things get personal when things go wrong, and you could end up with a family in tatters as well as a broken business. So why do friends and family get involved in the first place? Well, they want to support you. There is a level of loyalty that is important to them. They are easy to control, which you will not want to take advantage of because they are your family after all. You will want to be as transparent as you can with all investors, but particularly with family, because the repercussions can be so much more painful. When friends and family invest, there is usually little in terms of agreement drawn up. Unless they manage or work with investments on a regular basis, you should treat any family member that is investing as if they are an unsophisticated investor and give them as much information as they need to make a sensible investment, despite you being a family member. Quasi-partnership. This agreement is ideal for dealing with what I call a quasi-partnership. This isn't a legal partnership, but more of a joint or an equal shareholding in which you and one or more people are building up a company for all of your mutual benefits and salary. There may be tax benefits to setting such a relationship up as an LLP, but I do see many companies set up as limited companies for this purpose. This type of relationship, like family and friends, is based highly on emotion and the skill sets of the parties. Neither of you may invest money in the company, but you will be investing your time. By signing a shareholders agreement and other directed documents, you're both saying that you will work for the company and commit to building and growing it. I'm going to generalize at this point and say that most of these businesses that I come across in this arena will be consultancy or professional services, focused on providing some form of service to customers that require the skills of each of the partners. These relationships, in my opinion, are the strongest, and they last usually over the longest period of time. The disadvantage of this type of investment is that it's very personal. If someone gets ill or if a partner wants to leave, then this can be the most personal and frustrating of situations, especially if one of these investor partners is essential to the company's well-being, and them threatening to leave means that they cannot be easily replaced. Although these are the type of relationships that do prosper, often, if you get into this type of relationship at the early stages, one of you will probably end up doing more work than the others. This is a disadvantage of the quasi-partnership. Personality differences arise, and people do just move on. These are tough relationships to get out of or exit because there are a lot of emotions, sometimes broken promises, and heartache associated with them. When these relationships do go wrong, it can become really personal. This shareholders agreement can be used to set out these quasi-partnerships, but you will want to focus significantly on making sure that everybody knows what's expected of them in terms of work and the consequences within the company if they fail to perform their job. Dispute procedures and termination provisions, as you'll see in the shareholders agreement, will be the most important to get agreed in this type of investment relationship. Angel investors. This shareholders agreement is ideal if you're dealing with one or more business angel. These are usually private individuals or perhaps a collection of individuals who will invest in the company for a proportion of the company's share capital and sometimes a seat on the board. This will usually happen at startup or seed funding stages, but it may also happen at a growth phase later on. Angel investors are usually, but not always, individuals. They usually, but not always, are looking for around 15 to 35% of a business. The focus for an angel investor is really upon the rate of return of the investment, and they will probably want to focus their negotiations around how they exit the arrangement and sell their shares for profit in the midterm. You should welcome, but also be aware about these types of investors, because often they'll want to be protected from all types of risk, which may mean you end up doing significantly more to protect them than you ought to. When you do this, you end up losing your control and your ability to grow the company in the process. Often, these investors are incentivized by tax breaks that SEIS and EIS schemes offer, which is great for you. But sometimes their lack of experience in investment can mean that they don't think commercially, and they either throw all of the legal terms that they can into a shareholders agreement, or they don't negotiate something at all because they're scared about losing their money or spending money on a lawyer. The best type of angel investor is one that provides you with both cash and expertise, or a network that supports your growth plan. Joint ventures. This shareholders agreement is not really suitable when dealing with a joint venture, although the agreement will be in a very similar format if you get into a joint venture. What is a joint venture? It is the combination of two or more businesses with the purposes of pooling resources and embarking on a totally new venture together. The term joint venture or JV is used in a business context in a slightly different way to the legal context. In the business context, it means two parties are providing some form of resources for a joint project, perhaps, to get to the same goal, but it doesn't necessarily mean that a new entity is formed in the process. This is a legal joint venture. A joint venture is usually in a similar format to a shareholders agreement, but will have additional clauses. So even though a similar document could be used for a joint venture entity, this course won't actually cover legal joint venture agreements, since they're not well covered by that template. Joint ventures are more complex, and so you would need more support around specific terms, such as the initial investment, is this cash or is this assets, the distribution of profits, any services the shareholders will provide to the new entity, the management and control of the joint venture, intellectual property issues, and exit and termination. Venture capital. This shareholders agreement probably is not suitable if you're dealing with venture capital. A venture capital company or private equity company is one that specializes in investing, typically in unlisted, high-risk businesses. It usually develops the business with a view to listing it on a stock exchange, and in turn, achieving a significant return on its investment of over 25%. However, the VCs or venture capitalists may instead have a buyout of another round of investors, which is another exit strategy. These guys usually like shares with a certain preference for them. We'll discuss that later. But they will want to take over the company in the event that you, as a manager, fail in any of your duties. They will want to observe and monitor exactly what you're doing in the company and will want to veto decisions that they don't agree with, as well as receiving a high rate of return. This is very different from angel investors, quasi-partnerships, and any friends and family. Private equity money usually comes with more than just cash. It also brings knowledge of the industry or knowledge of how to realize the company's potential, which is incredibly useful. This template shareholders agreement is unlikely to be acceptable to any VC firm. When dealing with VCs, they will provide you with their shareholders agreement, and it will be tight, offer little room for maneuver and very little room for negotiation. With VCs, you're very likely to be getting less than you expect. But as they say, it is better to get 20% of something than 100% of nothing. And a VC in with your business can really escalate your business quickly. Frankly, let's be honest, it is not the moral duty or job of anyone, other than perhaps you and your board, to make your company a success or to invest in it for altruistic reasons. It is nicer, though, to deal with people who are actually on your side. That's preferable to being involved with people that would replace you at the drop of a hat. But you have to remember, investors are there for their interests. So unless you're dealing with a family member, they are there simply to provide support. Questions. We have walked through a short list of a few types of investors that you may encounter on your journey. Each group has a different motivation as to why they're getting involved with your business, and each will want different levels of information before, during, and after the investment. They will also then have different attitudes if the business goes under or starts to struggle. If you're early on this journey of seeking out investors, or if you know who your investors are and just want to double check that they're right for you, now is a good time to take a second to answer the following questions. 1. What type of investor do I want to work with? 2. How much impact do I want that investor to have on my business? 3. Do I want an investor experienced in my industry? 4. Am I prepared to accept a serious loss of control for higher levels of cash? 5. What is their motivation for joining my team? 6. How will I connect with these types of investors once they have already invested?